Hey everyone, today's video is going to be a PvP guide for Brewmaster Monk. Today I'll be going over some talents, PvP talents, stat priority, macros, rotation, and some additional tips for Brewmaster gameplay. Brewmaster is one spec that I really dove into in this past April of 2024, and I just really wanted to take the time to learn the class, and it has been a blast. It does take some time just to understand the different mechanics of the class, because it is unlike any other tank class in the game. But once you get it down, the reward of just learning it is so much fun. And so I highly recommend checking it out if you've ever been interested in trying out Brewmaster. It'll be worth your while, I promise. And so to start out, I'm going to be doing different videos for separate builds, but today I'll just be going over my general build, which is centered around DPS. And as of just this past week, which today is July 26th, it's a Friday, this past week they've released the Prepatch for the new War Within expansion. So I think nearly all the classes had talent tree reworks. So you'll see some spells in here that are new to the game that haven't really been in Dragonblight. And so I'll kind of go over those as we come across them. And starting with the Monk tree, which is the class tree on the left. At the top you have you have two spells that are given to you. One is Paralysis. This is your big CC ability that you have, and this incapacitates the target. That'll be one of your main CC abilities. And you also have Rising Sun Kick, which is one of your main heavy hitting DPS abilities. Down in the next row we have Tiger's Lust. This is a great spell to have because it removes any roots on you, and it increases your movement speed by 70% for 6 seconds. And this is great when you're trying to catch down or trying to catch an enemy that's kiting you, like a hunter or a mage or a ranged class, and or if you're trying to get away. This is a great spell to have. The next one has a new talent called Crashing Momentum. This is where if you roll or torpedo through the target, whatever targets are hit are snared by 40% for 5 seconds. Or disable, and this is just a regular, the standard ability that monks have had. I choose disable just because I can use it more situationally, and then knowing when I am going to hit the target, I feel like trying to gauge a roll or a torpedo would be a little bit cumbersome, because if you miss, then the snare misses. So I'd like to be able to just use disable because I have a better opportunity of making sure it lands on the target. Next is Fast Feet. This improves the damage of your Rising Sun Kick and your Spinning Crane Kick. On the next row we have Grace of Crane. This is just increases your self-healing. So if you're trying to look for survivability, this is a great option to have. We have Bounding Agility. Increases the travel distance of your roll or chi torpedo. Calming Presence is a choice node you could take. It just reduces all damage. I find survivability to be really strong as it is, so I don't really go for this point here. And this is also a new one. The range of disable is increased by 5 yards, and the duration of Crashing Momentum is increased by 3 seconds, and reduces the movement speed by an additional 20%, and that would be if you took Crashing Momentum option up here. Detox is a strong choice to have, especially against classes that apply poisons and diseases like Death Knights or Assassination Rogues. I find this to be very effective against Assassination Rogues. I've had troubles in the past surviving their DPS just over a period of time, and so using Detox removes that entirely. It's much easier to face Assassination Rogues with Detox. Next we have Vivify. I like having Vivify, this talent here, because it makes your Vivify an instant cast after 10 seconds and increases its healing, and also reduces its energy cost, so it's like a 3-in-1 benefit. And this is nice if you're in the middle of a fight and they remove some other instant healing, like healing elixir. So this is a nice option to have, just to if you need a quick heal on yourself. Jade Walk, this is a mobility enhancement. I use this in a separate build. Paralysis, now remove all rage effects. This is a new talent. This would be great against warriors, like Fury warriors, when they enrage themselves and use their cooldowns. You can just you could use Paralysis on them and it would remove those enrage effects. Spear Hand Strike, this is a great interrupt for healers and casters. I definitely recommend having this. Ancient Art just reduces the cooldown of paralysis and your leg sweep. Leg sweep is a stun that you have, and I believe it is now a base talent. So it's an AoE. It's a AoE stun. So anyone within a few yards, within 10 yards, gets stunned. So this just helps reduce the cooldown of that. These are great options to have. Here you have Chi Wave or Chi Burst. They both do damage to enemies and or healing to teammates. And in the past, Brewmaster has had a lot of button bloat, and so I try and trim down, I try and use as many passive abilities as I can. And so I just went with Chi Wave because every 15 seconds my Rising Sun Kick will automatically cast this to just prevent an additional ability for me having to press, and it's just passive, which is really nice. Transcendence is your transfer portal. You definitely want to have that. And energy transfer, so whenever you interrupt an enemy, it reduces the cooldown of paralysis and roll, which is really strong. So I highly recommend having that one. And here, it's just going to be based on your gameplay, like how you like to play. I prefer Chi Torpedo just because a lot of times if I'm on a flag map, if I'm trying to chase someone down that's way ahead of me, or if I'm trying to get away more quickly, I find that I've had more success with Chi Torpedo. Roll, you do an additional charge and get all the benefits of any of the other items that you picked at, such as snares and rolling through targets. But just in my experience for Battleground, Chi Torpedo has been my favorite talent choice. Next we have Frosty Zen. This increases all your damage dealt. Ring of Peace is a great one to have. It helps, block off areas. If people are chasing you, you can block off a tunnel and prevent them from coming in, and or knock people away. A lot of great scenarios to use this ability. So highly recommend it. Tiger Tail Sweep increases the range of leg sweep, which is your AoE stun. Then you have Improved Touch of Death. This is great to have to finish enemies off, especially when they get down to 15% health. It's an instant kill almost 99% of the time, but definitely great to have in your action bar. Expel Harm Healing increased by 5%, and critical chance increased by 15%. This is a great one to have because your Expel Harm is going to be your main healing ability. We'll go over some of the talents on the right here, but as you are doing DPS or you're receiving damage, you'll drop orbs on the ground. And those orbs will show, the amount of orbs you have will show up as a number here on the Expel Harm action bar, and I think it's 1 to 5. I want to say it maxes out at 5. But the more orbs you have, the more healing that Expel Harm will do. So it's definitely great to have a hard hitting and big healing Expel Harm. So anything that buffs that, I recommend using. Here we have another choice node between Yulon's Grace and Diffuse Magic. I see a lot of Brewmasters take Diffuse Magic. I think it's much better for situational, like if you're in arena or solo queue when you have like a Affliction Warlock or a Boomkin that's applying all their dots to you. This is great because you can hit this and it'll send all those dots back to them, and it's good to use in a heavy magic burst window because it reduces your magic taken. However, that's on a 1.5 minute cooldown, and I found that Yulon's Grace actually prevents a lot more damage over an extended game, especially in BGs. And to show you a quick example of that, I'll show you a previous game I had yesterday. I want to say, I think it was this one. Sorry guys, let me find it real quick. I think it was this one, yeah. So I got a second in healing, but you'll see Yulon's Grace was my second spot for healing. And it basically is a passive magic absorb shield that just activates every time you get into combat, and it stacks up to 5 times, up to 10%. And it's based off your max HP. So my max HP right now is 1.7 million. So it gives me a 176,000 magic bubble. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but over the period of like a 10 to 20 minute game, and you're always in combat, it adds up very quickly, as you can see. This is 12.87 million magic absorption that it's gave to me over the period of a game, which it's one less ability I have to worry about hitting in regard to being on my action bar, and it's passive, and I feel like the return it gives is much higher than the diffuse magic option. That's just my personal preference, but feel free to pick whichever one you prefer to use. Fortifying Brew, this is one of your main defensive cooldowns, and it got a higher cooldown. I used some talent that reduces cooldown, but I think it used to be 6 minutes. I want to say they've recently reduced it to 4 minutes. But just know that's one of your main defensive cooldowns. Here's another choice node. I usually go with Dampen Harm. This is another main defensive cooldown. The Dance of the Wind will just increase your dodge chance. This is great if it's a heavy melee team. But I feel overall Dampen Harm is probably more beneficial. It is on a 2-minute cooldown, but I find it very useful in all of my engagements. Next, you have 2 choice nodes here. One is it expels harmed healings increase by up to 100% based on your missing health, or you can get expel harmed critical healing is increased by 50%. I found I like to be healed for more when I'm lower health, so I went with this one. But feel free to try either one of them out. And here's another choice node. This is gonna enhance your fortifying brews, or it's gonna reduce its cooldown. I've always gone with the reduced cooldown in regard to just this build, this damage build, because I like running the PvP talent, which I'll cover later as well. It just gives your fortifying brew a much shorter cooldown, which I like having, because usually in combat I can use it twice at least with an extended fight. It just helps with overall survivability, and I've really enjoyed having it. Next one, we have Chi Proficiency. Increases your magic damage done. More importantly, increases your healing done. Healing Winds. This is a new talent. Really cool. I think they put this in the game because it is a replacement for Healing Elixir. So you used to have 2 charges of Healing Elixir, which is an instant heal, and it would heal you about, I want to say it was for 15% of your health. Now you get that benefit, but you have to use your Transcendence Transfer. And so if you use the Escape from Reality talent, which allows you to use Transfer twice within 10 seconds, you essentially can use this twice and get 30% of your health back. And this also benefits from your Celestial Fortune, so where you have a chance equal to your crit strike chance to be healed for an additional 80% of the initial amount healed. So this is a great talent to have because it's a beefy heal, and you have a really high chance of it healing for you an additional 80% on top of that. So it's really nice. Bounce Back reduces when you take a big hit with more than 12% of your maximum health. It reduces all damage you take by 20% for 4 seconds. This is a nice survivability talent that I like to use. Not a must-have, but I just like the survivability overall, keeping me in the fight longer. Martial Instinct increases your physical damage done by 4%, and avoidance increases by 4%. And then we have Flow of Chi. This is a new ability. It just has 3 different benefits based on how much health you have. So when you're above 90%, you have increased movement speed, and it's stacked with other effects. When you're between 90 and 35, you take reduced damage, which is always nice. And when you're below 35, your healing is received and increased by 10%. And this is great to have in conjunction with this talent here, because this is based off low health, and this is based off low health. You get a boost to your healing when you're low health, and this goes hand in hand with that. And last but not least, we have Clash. Clash had been a talent in the game. I think they recently made it available for all 3 specs of Monk, and this talent here is new. This is where when you roll or when you Chi Torpedo, if the target is within 10 yards of you, you'll lunge to them. I've tried it out. It's kind of a hit or miss, because if they are just out of range or maybe in the wrong direction, like if they're off to the side of you, you don't really lunge towards them. So I like using Clash because it's more on use, and I know it'll work when I use it versus a chance of wasting a roll or a Chi Torpedo. So I just like being more control of the outcome of the situation, so I prefer Clash. And Clash is nice because it's still a gap closer, but it forces them to run to you, and it roots them for 4 seconds, which is nice. And then onto the Brewmaster tree. A lot of these talents are going to be the same from the regular Dragonflight season. There are a couple new ones that I've taken in here for increased survivability. So up here you have Keg Smash. This is one of your main DPS abilities and grants you benefits towards shuffle and reducing the cooldowns on your brew. We have Purifying Brew. This is one of your main defensive abilities. It clears your stagger. clears 50% of it, and it also heals you for 25% of the amount cleared, but that's going to be based from this talent here. When we get down to that, I'll explain it. You have Shuffle. Shuffle increases the effectiveness of your stagger by 100%, and you get Shuffle by just doing your rotation. So it's granted by using Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick. And when you're playing, you're constantly hitting those buttons. The Shuffle will almost always be active. Here we have Gifted the Ox. These are the two abilities, and this is Spirit of the Ox. These are the two abilities that drop the healing orbs. One is based on when you take damage, and one is based on when you do damage with Rising Sun Kick or Blackout Kick. And there's two ways to use these. You can move through them, or if you, there's three ways. You can move through them, or if you use Spinning Crane Kick, it will bring these orbs closer to you and you'll consume them. And or if you just use Expel Harm, it'll use all of the ones that are on the ground nearby. We have Quick Sip. This reduces your, it purifies 5% of your stagger for every 3 seconds of shuffle that you get. And you'll see these different abilities will tell you how much shuffle it offers. So with Blackout Kick, you get 3 seconds of shuffle, so that automatically clears 5%. With Keg Smash, you get 5 seconds of shuffle, so that's another 5% that clears. And then with Spinning Crane Kick, it grants, I think, shuffle for 1 second. I'm not sure if that is per tick of damage, but I usually don't use Spinning Crane Kick too often. I just usually use main Blackout Kick and Keg Smash. And next we have Hit Scheme. Increases the damage of your Blackout Kick, and it I'm sorry, I take that back. It dealing damage with Blackout Kick increases the damage of your Keg Smash. So there's another ability that causes your Blackout Kick to hit multiple targets, which instantly stacks up to 3 or 4 depending on how many enemies you hit. And so this is very quick and easy to use. You just Blackout Kick into a group of enemies, then you instantly Keg Smash, and you have a buffed Keg Smash, which is nice. Elixir of Determination is a new talent. It helped with Monk survivability for sure, because for a long time Monk was having a hard time surviving when they were taking really heavy damage and they got within execute range. So this helps them with survive easier at low health. So when you fall below 40% health, you gain and absorb 50% of your recently purified damage, or a minimum of 20% of your max health, and it cannot occur more than every 15 seconds. So this is a really strong talent to have. I highly recommend using it if you find yourself dying a lot. It's helped me a lot, and I really enjoyed it. Next, you have a choice node, Special Delivery, or Russian Jade Wind. I like Special Delivery because it is a passive talent, and it just has a chance to throw a keg into the air and then does AoE damage and reduces the movement speed. It applies a snare essentially. Russian Jade Wind is an additional talent that you would have to throw in your action bar. It's good for AoE damage. I have not really used it in the PvP scenarios, but it's very common to use in PvE. Celestial Brew. This is one of your main defensive bubbles. And the way the Celestial Brew works is every time you purify damage, you gain a stack of purified chi, which it'll show up here in your buffs, and it stacks up to 10 times. But based on however much purified chi you have, it will buff your Celestial Brew to increase its damage absorption by up to 200%. And so just by passively purifying yourself, you start to gain those stacked, and the buff lasts for 15 seconds. So you want to make sure you're purifying at least every 15 seconds to keep that the purified chi buff active. That way, when you do hit Celestial Brew, it'll be able to consume all those stacks and give you a big bubble. August Blessing. This is a new talent. This basically turns your overhealing into a dot. I'm a little bit confused by the verbiage because it says when you would overheal, you instead convert an amount equal to 40% of your crit chance to a heal over time. I'm not sure how to translate that into English in regard to just the numbers, but just know that whenever you are overhealing, it gives you a dot based on the overhealing that you did. Next we have Strike at Dawn. This is going to be Rising Sun Kick. Grants you a stack of Elusive Brawler. Elusive Brawler is your mastery. and what that does is you get a stack of elusive brawler, and whenever each time you are hit by melee or you hit with blackout kick, and now including using rising sun kick, it'll grant you a stack of this. And you gain a stacking 35.5 increased dodge chance until your next dodge. That means until you dodge an attack, you're going to continue getting an increasing stack until you almost basically get a guarantee to dodge, and then it resets. And that's constantly being activated through blackout kick, receiving melee hits, and also doing rising sun kick. So you're constantly dodging, which is nice, especially against melee classes. Your breath of fire. This is one of your DPS abilities. Basically just an AoE fire damage, and then if your target is affected by Keg Smash, you want to make sure to use Keg Smash before you use Breath of Fire. If they're affected by Keg Smash, it'll also apply a dot to them, and they deal 5% reduced damage to you for 12 seconds. Next we have Guy Pins from Imperial Brew. This is where a percentage of the purified damage heals you, and that's what I was talking about earlier up here. So whenever you purify damage, you're healed for 25% of it. Invoke Nizal the Black Ox. This is an optional node. I like it because it helps with survivability, especially when you're just taking a ton of damage. One other benefit I see using it is when I'm facing rogues. Whenever they're trying to run away in stealth, I will throw my Ox out, and he'll keep them in combat, so I can keep the rogue in combat for longer and just put more pressure on them. So I found that to be very helpful with keeping rogues in combat, but as well as surviving some burst damage, because he will stagger a large portion of the damage you're taking. Next you have Shadow Blocking Treads. This is where Blackout's kicked and the damage increased by 20%, and it also hits 2 additional targets. So this is a talent that goes hand in hand with this talent here, Hit Scheme. So if you were to hit, it hits up to 3 people, I believe. Yeah, so it'll hit up to 3 people, which automatically grants you 3 stacks of for your next Keg Smash. That's already 3 out of 4, and you hit it one more time, you're at 4. And you can hit Blackout Kick every 4 seconds, so you have it very quickly. So these talents are very they synergize very well together, so I highly recommend having this. The other option is just reducing the cooldown of Black Kick, but also reduces its damage. I'm not a fan of that. I think a higher damage output with the benefit of additional targets hit, which helps this talent here, is a better option. Next you have Sal Salaban's Strength. So when you use Keg Smash, the remaining cooldown of Breath of Fire is reset. So this is really nice. So whenever you Keg Smash, you can Breath of Fire. And then Breath of Fire has a 15-second cooldown, but if you Keg Smash again, this is automatically reset. So you usually have Breath of Fire available immediately after Keg Smash, which is nice. The other option is increasing the damage of your Keg Smash. I'm sorry, I take that back. Keg Smash deals an additional 20% damage to targets affected by Breath of Fire. So if you were to Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, and then Keg Smash again, that would be an instance where they would take more damage. I prefer having Breath of Fire reset. It just feels smoother for the gameplay. I'm not really sure in regard to damage breakdown, but that's just the talent I've always used. Black Ox Brew or Bob and Weave. Bob and Weave will increase your stagger by up to 3 seconds. So rather than being a 10-second dot, it's a 13-second dot. Which is nice. You just spread the damage out a little bit longer, helps you survive it easier, and it's passive, so you don't have to worry about having an additional talent on your action bar. I prefer to use Black Ox Brew, and it got several benefits. It instantly refills all your energy. So if you're trying to heal yourself or do more damage, like if you're starved on energy, you could use this to get more Blackout Kicks and Tiger Bombs and stuff out. It also instantly recharges your Purifying Brews, which you have 2, and it also resets your cooldown of Celestial Brew. So I use this a lot in oh crap moments when I've run out of Purifying Brew charges. I've already used my Celestial Brew. I will usually hit this, and it'll instantly give me these back, and I find that it helps me survive a lot longer, especially when I'm struggling against multiple targets, trying to stay alive or spin a node, etc. Next we have Light Brewing or Training of Nizal. I prefer light brewing because it reduces the cooldown of purifying brew and celestial brew by 20%. And so your main abilities like blackout kick and keg smash, they reduce the cooldowns on all of your brews. And so by having a shorter cooldown on two of the main ones you're using all the time, I really like. The other one, Training Nazal, gives you 15% mastery based on your current level of stagger. I think this would be better for PvE and or if you're intentionally staying in the team fight. This could be good because you'd be taking a lot of consistent damage, which would make your stagger stay up. But if you're guarding a node or running flag, this I feel like you're going to lose a lot of benefit of this. Just because unless you're taking damage and staggering damage, you aren't really getting a benefit of mastery from it. So I think having the reduced cooldown on brews is better. Counter Strike. Each time you dodge or an enemy misses you, your next Tiger Palm or Spinning Crane Kick deals 100% increased damage. This is a nice damage talent. You're always dodging, so this is going to be proccing quite frequently. But this also goes really well with buffing Tiger Palm, because in your rotation, which I'll cover more later, Blackout Kick buffs several of your talents. After you use Blackout Kick, next talent you use, if it's any one of these, is enhanced, and you'll see Tiger Palm damage increased by 100%. So if you're able to see when the proc is available, or just during your regular gameplay, this will proc, and the next time you hit Blackout Kick and Tiger Palm, you do a big Tiger Palm hit, and that's also enhanced by the talent right below it as well. And this is the Tiger Palm has a 50% chance to deal 200% of normal damage, and it gives an additional second of brew cooldown reduction. So all of these two talents go synergize very well together, including with Blackout combo, and we'll get there in just a second. Charred Passions, your Breath of Fire ignites your right leg for 8 seconds, causing your Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick to deal 50% additional damage as fire, and refreshes the duration of Breath of Fire. So this is nice because after you've used Keg Smash and the Breath of Fire, you could just reset the dot of Breath of Fire just by using Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick, which is guaranteed to happen. So it's just nice to have for additional damage. The other option is Dragonfire Brew, and this makes your Dragonfire breathe an additional 2 times, and increases damage based on stagger. So if you were intentionally staying in big team fights consistently, I think this would probably benefit you better. But usually tanks are either running the flag and or guarding nodes. So unless you're on a map where you'll be in a team fight, like Eye of the Storms in the middle of the map, or maybe Silver Shard Mines, if as a tank you're going to try and stay in a node with where the team fight is, this could be a better option for you. Otherwise, I would recommend this one. Exploding Keg. This is a nice damage ability. It has a couple perks to it. It does a good bit of damage up front. That's good to use in your burst rotation or your damage rotation when you're trying to burst someone down. But it also has a defensive and offensive benefit, which is it causes any melee characters to miss all their attacks for the next 3 seconds. So this is great against warriors, if they're trying to burst you down, or rogues. Maybe they have you stun locked, and you can throw it down right after you trinket and or his stun lock is done. And even with pallies and stuns and warrior stuns, it mitigates all of that for 3 seconds. So you can really use this defensively or offensively, depending on what kind of engagement you're in, and it can completely mitigate and throw off the enemy's damage and or CC. And so I find this to be very impactful. I highly recommend using it, and it's a great option to have. Next, we have Elusive Footwork. This increases the damage of Blackout Kick, and its criticals have a chance of granting an additional stack of Elusive Brawler, and that goes into play with your mastery. We've already covered Facepalm. And now we're down at the bottom. The Ox Dance is a new talent. This is another talent they've given Brewmasters to help survive when they're really low health or taking a high amount of burst damage. And so this does casting Purifying Brew grants a charge of Ox Dance, which is increased based on your stagger level. So the more stagger you have, and when you purify, you can gain additional charges. But when you take damage that is greater than 40% of your, or it is 50, but I have a talent down here that reduces it to 40. Take more damage than 40% of your health, a charge is consumed to increase the amount you stagger. And this is nice for when you're taking big hits. And then these are enhanced by these two ones. Rising Sun Kick also grants a charge of Ox Stance, so you're getting charges passively just by using your damage rotation and Rising Sun Kick. And then Ox Stance will now trigger when an attack is larger than 40% of your current health. So without this ability, it's 50. So this makes it to where you can take it'll proc it more often, which is nice for damage mitigation. And you have Stormstout's Last Keg. This buffs your keg smash damage and also gives you an additional charge. I do recommend this because one important thing for Brewmaster is to be utilizing your brews, and keg smash is is an ability that grants 3-second cooldown reduction. So it's one of the largest cooldown reductions abilities towards your brews. And so having 2 charges of that is always beneficial. It also just helps with the damage output, and it's a good option to have, so I'd highly recommend it. And then Blackout Combo is a talent that I don't see all Brewmasters take. I really like it because I can use it situationally for whatever kind of engagement I'm in. So if I'm just strictly doing damage, just focusing on damage, after every Blackout Kick, I'll just hit Tiger Palm. Because it'll, as we talked about earlier, Tiger Palm gets really good synergy with these 3 talents. So you just be hitting big Tiger Palms. If maybe you're in an engagement with multiple enemies and you're early in the fight, what you can do is one rotation option you could do is Keg Smash, then Blackout Kick, and then Breath of Fire. So what's going to happen is Breath of Fire provides a damage reduction by 5% if they're affected by Keg Smash. So once you start the Keg Smash, and then with Blackout Kick, it's going to increase that damage reduction by an additional 5% and the damage of Breath of Fire by 50%. So now you have 10% damage reduction and a buffed Breath of Fire. So you get a bigger AoE damage to the multiple enemies you're fighting, and all of them will deal 10% less damage to you for a short period of time. I think it's 12 seconds. That's one situational thing you could use it for. If you're just trying to spin a node and you're fighting multiple enemies and having issues, having trouble surviving, I definitely recommend using Keg Smash after Blackout Kick, because this will increase the cooldown reduction you get from Keg Smash for an additional 2 seconds. So I believe it's 5 seconds now, based off Keg Smash alone. So that's a great one to use. Use a Blackout Kick and then Keg Smash to get cooldown reduction on your brews to help you survive longer. And then another great situational one is Celestial Brew. So I mentioned earlier, Celestial Brew benefits from purified chi, which is generated from using your purifying brew, which clears your stagger. Now this is nice because if let's say you're at like 3 stacks of purified chi and you're taking heavy damage, you just need a bubble, like an instant bubble. What you can do is you can Blackout Kick, and then when you use Celestial Brew, it's going to grant you 3 additional charges towards that Celestial Brew. So if you originally had 3 and then you Blackout Kick Celestial Brew, it's gonna act like it had 6. So it's gonna be a bigger bubble, which is nice. And then last but not least, Purifying Brew pauses stagger damage for 3 seconds. I haven't really used this enhancement from it. I found the other one to be more beneficial. But if you find that that's beneficial for you, definitely try it out and leave a comment down in the comment, because I'd love to hear more about it if you find that's helped you a lot. And last but not least, we have Weapons of Order and or Press the Advantage. I usually go with Weapons of Order because it's an on-use DPS ability. It increases your mastery by 10%. Additionally, it also resets the cooldowns of your Keg Smash, and any enemies that are hit by Keg Smash or Rising Sun Kick take additional 8% damage from you for the next 10 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. And you could definitely get that stacked up very quickly, because you could go Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, and by the time you're done with that, you have another Blackout Kick ready, and then Keg Smash again, and then you have the max benefit from it. So it's not just offensively, the increasing your mastery increases your attack power as well, but it also increases your elusive brawler stacks against melee, so it's just a win-win. Press advantage is nice. It makes Tiger Palm passive, and you get all the Tiger Palm benefits. Just with the flow of the game, the flow of my rotation, I just found this to be, for me personally, more disruptive. I like having more command over when I want to burst or hit someone really hard, and so I like using this one. So this is my talent build for damage. If you have any questions in regard to any of these talent options or choices, please feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to chat more about it and get your input on it. Next we have PvP talents. So the three main PvP talents I go with this build are going to be Hot Trub, and what this does is anytime you purify damage, if you use Purifying Brew, it's going to apply a portion of that damage to all nearby enemies. And so it's a nice AoE ability. But also, after you clear 100% of your maximum health and stagger damage, your next Breath of Fire incapacitates targets for 4 seconds. So you'll constantly be seeing your Breath of Fire with proc, and it's based off of this because you're clearing damage all the time, and it gives you an additional CC ability, and it's an AoE incapacitate, and so it's nice because if you're in a big team fight, and this ability finally procs, you can incapacitate everyone for just 4 seconds, and that gives you a nice little window to either apply more CC or maybe get a quick heal off, or give you a quick 4 seconds to just get a break and kind of figure out something to stay alive or whatever the situation commands. The next one is Double Barrel. This increases your keg smash damage by a ton, but it also stuns all targets. And so that's good. This ability here, it's got the same icon as Exploding Keg, but I like to use this. So I have a nice CC chain. I will usually either paralysis someone with it incapacitates them, and then maybe I'll follow it up with a leg sweep because it's a longer stun, and then I'll follow it up with a double barrel. So they're like CC'd for a solid, what is it? I think it's, I want to say in PvP, I want to say it's like 5 seconds, 4 seconds, and then you have a 3-second stun, and then you have another stun. So it's like, I think it's like 7 or 8 seconds of CC, which is a nice CC chain. And then last but not least, we have the micro brew, which reduces the cooldown of fortifying brew. So I went with both cooldown options for fortifying brew because it's a brew. Anything that has the name brew in it, it's gonna benefit from the cooldown reduction of your abilities towards your brews. And so I like having a quick fortifying brew available because it helps with overall survivability. And I just really enjoyed that style. And then for stat priority for Brewmaster, I have been going with heavy crit and verse. Brewmaster benefits very highly from crit because it allows their self healing to be phenomenal. And so if you're finding that you're struggling to stay alive or with self healing, I would definitely recommend trying to get more crit. The soft cap currently right now in Dragonflight, I think is at 40%, and so mine is right at that mark, but it will go up and down based on some additional enchants I have. But you'll see, well, right now it's really high because I have a weapon enchant that buff my crit chance every so often, so that's not really applicable. But if I take that off, right now I have 44, and this is based off of another item enchant I have that increases my crit while I'm in combat. Now I want to say it's while I'm above a certain amount of health. I want to say it's above 70% health. I'll maintain this, but after I drop below 70%, it drops off, and then I have a period of time I gotta wait to get it back. But crit is definitely a great stat to have. Verse is also another good stat because it not only increases your damage done, decreases your damage taken, but also increases your healing done. So that helps with just self-healing. So that's like a 3-in-1 benefit. And then mastery will just kind of be based on what you're wanting to do. If you wanted to focus more on just being a straight DPS monk or brewmaster, you want more mastery because mastery also increases your attack power. And it's really strong against melee. So it's just kind of situational. I've done my best to just kind of balance it out. So I have all three of these stats, I think right around the soft cap, which I believe is 40% for crit. I want to say it's 38% for mastery, and I want to say 30% for verse. I forget. You can look it up on Wildhead or Icy Veins, but I'm right around just that mark here. Let's see. So you see, yeah, just a little bit over on crit, a little bit over on mastery, and a significantly amount over verse. But you can't really help the verse portion of it because there's just so much versatility on your gear. But between the two stats, it just depends on what you're wanting. If you're wanting more self-healing and survivability, go with crit. If you're wanting more DPS, go with mastery. Or you can do what I did, just get a balance of both, and you kind of get the best of both worlds. And for macros, I'm not a heavy user of macros. I'm not opposed to them. I already have a lot of buttons on here, and I'm not a super advanced player, so I'm not finding myself in desperate need of macros. But if you're interested in the one that I use, I just use one currently, and basically whenever I use my exploding keg, it'll also proc my crit trinket, and so you'll see I can just throw it and it activates both, and they're both on a 1 minute cooldown, which is nice, so it synergizes really well with timing, and that's the only macro I currently have. And next is rotation. Rotation is pretty simple. If you're just doing damage, you want to just mainly do Blackout Kick and the Tiger Palm, and then you can Keg Smash into Breath of Fire, and then you can just rinse and repeat Blackout Kick. And whenever you have Rising Sun Kick, go ahead and use it. It does not benefit from the Blackout Kick enhancement, so you don't have to worry about it using you don't have to worry about it using the enhancement. You can just use Rising Sun Kick off cooldown, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Keg Smash, Breath of Fire. That's just a general rotation. If you're trying to spin a node, or if you have a bunch of enemies and you're not really focused on one particular target, the Blackout Kick and the Tiger Palm is a good single target damage scenario. But if you're just trying to AoE everyone and just keep them off the node and spin or something, you can kind of change it up. You could do the Tiger Palm, but also follow it up with a throw spinning Crank Kick into your rotation. Because after you Keg Smash and Breath of Fire, remember your Blackout Kick and spinning Crank Kick benefit from they basically increase your damage. So after you use Breath of Fire, it'll buff your spinning Crank Kick and Blackout Kick to do more damage, and it resets the dot on them. So just situationally, depending on what you're doing, you can just throw spinning Crank Kick in your rotation after you Breath of Fire, and that'll keep the dot alive, but also AoEs and protects the node. Otherwise, I usually just do the Blackout Kick and the Tiger Palm if I'm just single target. That's going to be your main rotation against single target. Trying to think. If you're trying to burst, what I do is I usually the weapon to order lasts for 10 seconds. I'm sorry, it actually lasts for 30 seconds. But you get the damage increase from Keg Smash and Rising Sun Kick for the next 10 seconds. So what I'll do is I will use my Exploding Keg to start, and then I will stun them, then do weapon to order, and I go into my single target rotation. And then I just keep doing Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Keg Smash, and by that point, they'll be struggling, and you can use the additional CC abilities if you need. Throw in, use your double barrel, and that'll stun them. And just that's a good way to apply pressure, but that's usually how I do my burst rotation. And then, last but not least, just some tips. I think one main tip I was talking about was just situationally kind of figuring out how to utilize your Blackout combo enhancements. And so if you're just going for straight damage, it's just Blackout Kick and the Tiger Palm. If you are needing if you've used your brews and you're needing quicker cooldowns, you want to go Blackout Kick, Keg Smash. That'll help reduce the cooldowns in your brews a lot faster. If you are maybe about to start a fight with multiple enemies, You could do a keg smash, blackout kick into breath of fire, because now it shows they do 10% reduced damage to you. That's a good way to mitigate, damage early fight from multiple enemies. If you're taking a lot of damage and maybe you just are in a pinch for you needing a bubble or a heal, you want to go to blackout kick into celestial brew, and that'll give you a nice little bubble. And let's say you've already done that and you are needing additional bubbles, or you need more purifying brews back instantaneously, and you've already used your celestial brew, use your black ox brew. What this will do is, I'll go ahead and let's see. Let me take some damage. I can show you what it looked like when all of these are off. Or have been used and off cooldown. Okay, well I can't get his attention. There you go. There you go. I'm gonna use this, and then if I use Black Ox Brew, it resets them both immediately. And from there, you could purify damage if you need, or go ahead and Blackout Kick into Celestial Brew again. It gives you another strong bubble. Some other pointers. Let's see. I like to use Torpedo for when I'm on basically any map, but especially for when I'm running flags, because Torpedo will give you a speed enhancement after you use it, and it stacks twice. And so what you'll do is you'll be running, let's say you use Torpedo, you have a 10-second window where you have increased movement speed. This will count down all the way to 0, and the second it hits 0 is when you want to use the second one, because now you have increased movement speed by 60% for the next 10 seconds. And by the time this ticks out, you already have another one available. So I like to use them back to back, but I'll spread out the usage if I can. That way I can almost have basically have three in a row essentially. That's why I like using Torpedo, because it just gives you better mobility and it travels farther. And some other tips. I think you'll find some additional tips in some of my other videos with my gameplay, just things that come to mind as I'm playing. Remember to use Invoke Nizal the Black Ox against rogues, because it'll keep them in combat, and it'll help you help keep pressure on the rogue and kill them easier, and or mitigate some of their damage. And it's a great one to use when you're taking a bunch of damage from multiple enemies or just big burst damage. And then another thing is you want to use your defensives early. And what I mean by that is if you're about to get into engagement with a warrior or a paladin or really anyone, and you know that they're about to burst you, you want to use Dampen Harm before the damage hits you. Because if you take, I don't know, let's just be ridiculous and say you take a massive hit of like 400, 500k, like using it after that's happened kind of defeats the purpose of the cooldown. Because what this does is it reduces the damage you take based on the size of the attack. So the larger attacks are reduced by a greater amount. And so the 500k hit would be reduced to 250k. Or maybe a 100k hit, it would be reduced to like an 80k hit. So it's good to use your defensive early. If you use them after you've already begun losing a ton of health, it's gonna be a lot harder to bounce back. So just using them preemptively, you'll learn, really helps you survive. And one scenario I found, especially like let's say warriors for example, when I duel warriors, as soon as they're about to start the engagement, I'll use my Dampen Harm. So it'll mitigate a lot of their upfront damage, and at this point they probably already stunned me and have used their damage cooldowns. And right after Dampen Harm is up, by this time I've already purified some of their damage, so I have some stacks of chi, purified chi. I'll heal myself, I'll Blackout Kick, and then I'll Celestial Brew, which now gives me additional bubble to mitigate all their damage. And by this time, most of their burst damage window is gone or been used up already, and you've mitigated a ton of it. So now this prevents the pressure from you having to heal up. Also against warriors specifically, they're a class that has reduced healing reduction abilities, so it impacts your self-healing. And so by using those early on, you're not having to fight to heal yourself up while you're also taking a ton of damage. You're actually able to mitigate all the damage. You don't really have to do any self-healing. and then you can just go on the offensive and fight the warrior. And so dampen harm right at the start of the engagement into a purify some of the damage, blackout kick in the celestial. And then to make it even further, that you can also drop an exploding keg, either during the engagement or right after your celestial brew and dampen harm are done. And this will make him miss all his attacks for 3 seconds. So it's very impactful. It helped a lot with especially melee classes, so DHs, warriors, rep paladins, enhancement shamans. That rotation really, that defensive rotation really helps mitigate a ton of damage up front. And so appreciate you watching. If y'all have any questions about any of the talents used in this particular damage build, please feel free to drop a comment down in the comment section. Like I said, I am not an advanced, high tier Brewmaster player. I'm just a casual player who very much enjoys playing this class. I'd love to be able to give my input and knowledge on it and get feedback from the community. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.